Welcome back, everyone, to the Love Your Journey podcast with Tara Jo and Bailey, who is hopefully going to sleep beside me today on the floor. Oh, yes, he's shaking his collar a couple seconds. I am joined by Marjolaine Rose for a second time. It's such a pleasure, again, to sit here across from you. If you haven't had a chance to listen to our first podcast together, I invite you to do that. And if it's your first time, Marjolaine Rose is a sacred alchemist, an introspective guide and community weaver. She guides women through transformative homecomings, deeply connected to the rhythms of nature within and around us. Blending self love, imagination, and expression through the lens of embodiment, our body's unique language of the senses. Her work invites us to heal in community, to remember that laughter is the medicine of the soul and that true liberation begins when we come home to ourselves. Thank you for being here again. I'm
Thank you for
excited to
having
have
me.
you. Yeah.
I'm excited to
Well,
be here.
when we recorded that podcast, yeah, it was just yesterday for those secret. It was just yesterday that we recorded that. We were really excited to just continue the conversation. And what I was really feeling called to talk about more in this conversation is this piece around community and connection, because this year especially I have been calling in community for myself and
Mm.
also in my business, starting a community called the Divine Love Healing Collective, really getting called to have a place for women to come to, no matter what they're doing, no matter what transition they're in, so that they feel like they're not alone through it, because we can feel so alone sometimes. And I think too, one of the biggest awareness I've had is that community doesn't have to be in your neighborhood. It doesn't have to be in your neighborhood. And you can have connections worldwide, anywhere, to some of your best friends, soul sisters, those just guides along the way that can pop in and pop out when necessary and still feel like you can connect as if it was yesterday, which is sort of you're in my friendship, really. So going back to this piece, you and I have never met in person,
Mhm.
and which is kind of wild to me, but we have lived in two different provinces. And when I did live near Vancouver, I lived there for about a year and a half. We never did see each other. I don't even know if we knew each other while I was there. My sister had referred you to me when I was
Mhm.
doing animal communication, and your dog, Dunkaroo, as I call him, Duncan.
Mhm.
Dunkaroo
Dunkadoodle
has,
doo.
yeah, he's crossed to the other side just recently, actually,
Mhm.
and and he brought us together, which is kind of cool, as animals often do. Really,
Mhm.
some
Mhm.
of the coolest people I have met have been in a dog park. Really,
Yes.
and we don't always see each other, but when we are together, it's like we haven't ever, uh, left each other's sides. So, do you want to speak to this piece in your own, not only your own words, but your own experience of what it is to have community, call community in, and
Mhm.
we'll speak about how we can seek out community for ourselves maybe a little bit later on, but just from your lens of why you believe it's so important. I know
Mhm.
for me, I'm a huge advocate of finding your community, because there is one. That's the biggest thing I want to stress right now. And every one of my clients knows that. I'm huge on, if you are with people that aren't supporting you, to find the people that do, because you need that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if you're listening to this right now and you're feeling really alone and you have no idea what it feels like to be in community or feeling connected to others, I invite you to continue to listen, because I know Marjolaine has a real experience with this in many different sisterhoods and in your own, probably in your own world. So yeah, just speak to that for a bit.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that invitation. I also what came through when you said that, like if someone's listening right now and you're feeling really alone, I'm also going to invite you to take a deep breath and feel your feet on the ground and feel the support of Mother Nature, of this Earth Mother that is holding you. Because there's lots of ways in which we can feel alone. And when we can remember that we are connected to and are nature, that thread alone has been a huge support system for me in times when I haven't felt like I had a community to hold me or meet me in the varying degrees of ways in which I've needed to be met as I've moved through
Yeah.
my own healing journey and my own liberative journey. So, yeah, it just felt like being like, yeah, you might feel alone and like take a moment, take a breath, take a beat, feel the brilliance of your body as your breath moves through your body and feel
Yes.
that connection to earth. And if you feel that yearning, like this perhaps will be an episode that has you, reaching for that thread. And Tara Jo and I will always be here to help you weave that through. So for myself, goodness, I mean, I'm blessed as someone who I can say that I've got some dear friends that I've known my whole life. I say my whole life. If I look at like averages, right? I met them when I was 10, right? So dear friends who I consider sisters, who I consider family. And there was a time in my life and my experience that I started to go more internal. And we touched briefly on our last conversation about grief. And I remember one of the things that I experienced through grief is some isolation. And that was in the process of, oh, wow, so many threads around conversations that are accepted around death or even the comfortability around death. And gosh, please have me back so we can talk all things death. And what
Yeah.
I mean to say is like when it comes to grief,
Yes.
like sometimes when people don't know what to say, they say nothing at all. And that is medicine in itself and also can feel quite isolating. And for myself, for my own personal experience, sometimes when I don't know what to say, I won't say anything at all. And that would be in the example of like, hey, I need help, or I'm about to cry and I actually just want to like be held in the crying. And all that to say is that it's like I'm trying to find the words to encapsulate like the beauty of those deep friendships. And when we start to get to the place of unraveling who we thought we were supposed to be and start turning towards more and more who we are, I know I had in my story around that it's meant that I wouldn't be understood or that there wasn't a place or space for me within my community. Now, I can sit here at 39 years old and say that was wrong. Absolutely. I've got some beautiful friendships that have been with me all the way throughout those stories. And despite those stories, we've remained connected and fostered even deeper bonds as a result of saying, like, hey, I've had this story and it's like, no, let's grow together. Let's move together. And that's not always the truth. It's like, they say there's friendships for what is it? Reasons, seasons, lifetimes, right? And
Yeah.
at certain times when I started to explore, I would say more of my sacred connection, more of my divine connection, which really was through the journey of losing gosh, I say losing my mom. She died. My stepmom died in 2013. And it had me, that loss, that grief, really opened me up to how I mentioned in the last episode, like we're so much more than what we can see, right? So other
Mm.
dimensions, other aspects of ways of still being with our loved ones beyond this physical life. And that meant that I was starting to discover and explore spirituality in a way that I hadn't explored before. And um, it was pretty isolating at first. Like I would start to learn new things, and then I wouldn't necessarily have people I could share those things with. So I was doing it all alone, like in an isolated kind of like um it's interesting. I'm kind of like stopping myself from going into too much detail because of like the how and why. I'm sure we'll circle back here eventually through our time together. And like it was kind of, you know what, truthfully, I wasn't comfortable with it. I thought it was weird that I was starting to get like I could smell my mom's perfume and she had been passed away for 3 months. Like, who do I tell that to? And not
Right.
only have them respond in a way that didn't have me question my own where I was already questioning, like I didn't need them to mirror
Yeah.
back my own doubts around whether that was real. Because gosh darn it, I wanted to hold on to that like it was real and true because I mean, goodness, now I know it absolutely was. And at the time, it's
Hmm.
like finding that community to hold the space for our explorations and not with judgment, with openness and with a sense of belonging, of welcoming.
Mm.
That took me a long while. And it really just started with me dipping my toes into different aspects of things that interested me. And I would just start to sign up for, okay, that was the first Oracle deck. I did an Oracle reading class where it was like auras and Oracle cards. And I was like, what is an Oracle card? But an aura sounds cool. I want to see what people's like colors are. Turns out can't read auras for anything. And Oracle cards, super cool. And I could kind of like go off and onto that.
Yeah.
And then I would sign up for like trainings and things that the teacher was offering. And then I would start to, it's like following those breadcrumbs. So that's like I'm talking about like belly to belly growing that community where I would be like, oh, hey, I like what you're saying. I like your curious heart. Like, let's talk more, or go for tea, or it's just like having that sense of courage to ask for something more. And then goodness, I mean, Tara Joe, like it's correct. My favorite people in the whole wide world, not all of them live in my province or my country.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
been following those breadcrumbs to find myself in amongst communities where you do feel this you're in a community that feels like home, and you're in a space
Mm.
that feels like a space that you can start to discover and explore the inner worlds of others that you can kind of go, ooh, yeah, my heart sees your heart too. And staying like open and curious for that and following those breadcrumbs
Yeah.
too.
So, what's popping into my mind right now too is to talk about this sense of community because there's a lot of wounding. There's a lot of sisterhood wounding. And when I say sisterhood, this doesn't necessarily mean in your sister in a family, but sisterhood in terms of women in community, women in the workplace, women in sports. We talked about sports yesterday, women in these different groups and the wounding that can happen, which potentially prevents us from wanting to jump into other communities, right? And I
Mhm.
hear this. So the women in the Divine Love Healing Collective are all ages, and I have women that are in their 60s still feeling this way, still feeling like they are left behind and nobody gets them, and that breaks my heart, frankly, because I feel like everyone has a place here. Every single human soul has a place here, and there is community. It's allowing yourself to receive it when it shows up and allowing yourself to be open to what it is that you're actually wanting to, because I think for me, growing up in a small town where it didn't feel nourishing for my heart in many ways, in some ways it opened myself up to the singing and the drama and setting the stage for what I do now. Really, that's really what that was, in many levels. But other pieces around feeling like I didn't belong, or feeling I couldn't say something, or I didn't have the right voice, or doing, all of these pieces can lead to a feeling of trying to prove yourself as well in the future, right? And everything we do, and that's where that pushing and forcing piece can come from a lot of the time. and not only just about with, friendships that we grew up with, but it can really root into like how we were in community in our own home as well, like how we were raised and parented and programmed, and that collective piece there too. But I really want to show how we could, as an individual, like if there's listeners on this call that don't feel like they belong anywhere, what do you feel they could do? What do you think that would be one step that they could do to get closer to finding their community? It's like, for me, I feel like it's opening up the vision for themselves. So sometimes we can have blinders on. I always say we're like blinders. We can only see what's in front of us. But if we allow ourselves to just be open to how other possibilities of community can show up, then things like that could show up. As an example, virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I have women in
Yeah.
the collective that are from the United States and from Canada and from all over. They're not just limited to the city I'm in. I don't even know. I think there's one person that's in there that is from here, maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that, for my point, sometimes it's just the perspective shift of what you think community could be, might not be, and
Mm.
where else could we open ourselves up to. So just, yeah, if you want to just tell me
Yeah.
your
I mean, I
feelings on
could
that.
weave a lot of threads here. And first of all, I just want to speak to, I mean, it's not my own personal work to speak into like the sister shadow of things. And it would do a disservice to not speak to the fact that like when women gather, when women connect, when we hear each other's voices and amplify each other's light, there is real power here. And so the
Mm, yeah.
roots and the history as to why these ruptures exist go far beyond our familial patterns and um into yeah, I mean some dark history in regards to the reasons as to why these really old things exist, and we get to continue to move forward and uh, I would say continue to put in your pocket the moments of times that you have with women that are healing. Focus
Yeah.
on what that has felt like, what that opens up for you, and continue to build evidence around you through your perspective lens of how good it could be. So there's like it's a yes and in that there's shadow and there's lots of reasons why, and absolutely, and within our own particular stories and our own actual existence. And if we want to work towards and lean into, I keep coming back to like the remembering of our wholeness, it's going to be us in community, shining back to each other who and how we are, that we're really truly
Hmm.
going to see the fullness and express and experience the expansion that's available to us when we can come together. So I think I want to pour some, I want to say love and honey on those of us who are still continuing to feel through what that rupture has rippled into our lives and why it can be really nerve wracking to come into spaces where you're kind of like, ooh, right, like who's, being prepared for, an interaction that won't feel so good. And I would say, look for community spaces that have really clear guidelines, that have really clear
Hmm.
boundaries and suggestions that are held in relation to how we are all invited to engage with one another. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I I don't believe any of us interacting in these spaces are intending to harm. And we are always looking for creating as safe as possible spaces. But what is safe for me might not feel safe for you. And being able to be in a place and a space where we can communicate when we are being harmed or when we've had an experience and then openly have discoveries and explorations together as to how we move through that is important. So it's um part of me wants to say, like, just jump in and, like, don't do that. Look for ones that actually say, like, hey, we know what is possible here when we are connecting from a whew, deeply integritous place.
Mm,
And when you can see that that scaffolding is there for you, like, these spaces are created by those of us who have learned to move through and heal through a lot of those circumstances and situations within our bones and within our blood, so that we can actually continue to let that ripple into the field of that community space too. So, like, yes, listen to your heart, listen to what, like, lets you lean in. And yeah, look for the spaces that are clearly saying, like, we've got you. We're here to do this together. I think that feels really important as a starting point.
yeah, I mean, I mean, there's so many things here. First of all, I love, love, love communities that have clear boundaries because boundaries are about keeping safety for both you and I, right? A lot of people think the lens of boundaries is about just putting your foot down. That's
Mm,
not what it is.
mhm.
It's about allowing ourselves so that everybody is clear on things, right? And
Yeah.
clear on, the requirements, expectations or none, all of those things. And I think too, sometimes in community, what I've noticed, especially over this last year, is that depending on the lens of who we are, some people feel compelled to comment to help, right?
Mm,
Rather
mhm,
than just comment to say, I hear you, and just
mhm.
witness the person, but they feel like they have to offer a solution or offer, and that's what there's this driving force that's doing it. And some people can receive that beautifully, and others,
Yeah.
it'll feel jarring and it'll
Mhm,
feel really triggering and it'll feel
mhm,
like, well, who are you to tell me? Right. And so I wanted to speak to this because there's an invitation in this uncomfortableness that can happen in community sometimes too. When there is these pieces of, that's where the clear guidelines come into play, to
mhm.
just lay it out what that looks like to keep everyone safe. But I think we've all seen that online. People comment and have to say, harsh word or things like that. And we don't know their story. And it's not ours to tell and it's not ours to feel. And we don't have to take it on, nor do we have to respond to that harsh comment either. Right. But there's something inside of us, often through our lens of life, that feels compelled for us to rectify it or make it better or, those kind of things. And I think the community that I've tried to create here, not only in just Love Your Journeys business over the last 11 years, but specifically in the Divine Love Healing Collective, is this place where if an uncomfortable moment comes up through the lens of somebody else in the community, I have a safe space in my inbox that they come and they say, hey, you know, I don't think I'm taking this the right way. Can you show me a different way to look at this? That's the beauty of it. Because I want us to learn from these conscious conversations we're trying to have so that it's not so jarring to the nervous system. And I think that's a beautiful place to, number one, to be a leader of a community and offer that space to have those lovingly conscious conversations. And you know, curious too. I mean, I've been in a lot of communities this last year, especially where there has been some uncomfortable things for me in terms of me trying to use my voice, it not being taken well, whether it's through tears or whether it's just me sharing what was going on. And you could see clearly it was being taken, uh, triggering people, whether it be the leader or not. And I curious for you if you were to speak to leaders of communities, so whether that be other coaches, other healers doing sacred spaces, other communities. I mean, and there's so many communities here. workplace communities,
Hmm.
communities with our children. But if you were to speak in terms of the leader that you are and the communities that you've helped nurture yourself in your history, what is one thing that you could offer if they were wanting to nurture a community and create this space? How would you start a conversation if somebody was to come to you, because you are definitely an expert when it comes to community weaving. I've seen that over the years. I've seen, communities you've been a part of and just how really nourishing it is to have you in those spaces. And I hope people really appreciate that about you. But what's one thing from your expert lens that you would say this is really what you should be focusing on first? And
Well, it's interesting because expert, yes, sure. And every situation is a varying degree. It depends on what it is that you're teaching. It depends on what it is that you're offering. What sort of space are you saying that you're creating? And then how are you staying in integrity with how you're showing up within that space as well? Like it's
mm,
not these are guidelines for all of you participating, and me who's hosting this gets to follow by a different set of rules or
right.
guidelines, or like it's if you say you're about it, be about it,
Mm,
and that's
yeah.
not necessarily from a nurturing lens. And at the same time, like it's fierce nurturing, it's like, hold on, I need to, if these are the guidelines in which I'm expecting all of us to, and hoping and inviting us all to operate by them, this is how I'm going to do it. But this explicit, I just want to circle back to the place of, sharing and then being offered um, solutions. And like, I'm sorry, but who are any of us to tell any of us that we're broken and we need solutions?
Mm,
Let's stop looking at
yeah.
each other through the lens of, oh, you're going to need, like, here's a way I can meet your need. Unless my need explicitly says, I'm asking for XYZ in this department. Do you know how healing it can be just to have your words witnessed? It's
Yes.
everything. It can
Yeah.
be everything. It can also be really activating to like let your truth lie out there and have it be seen, and
Yeah.
the medicine it can be to have someone just, send you some love, a little heart emoji, or just like, thank you for sharing, that kind of reflection back. But the nurturing piece is, it tends to, I've been in varying degrees of communities over the years, and the ones that remember that though we're connected through a screen, that we're in the room together,
Mm,
how would you want to respond? How would you say something? How would you express something? How would you radiate from that place if we were in the same room? And
mm,
and I understand that sometimes, writing a comment back isn't necessarily, tone and intonation and all of that comes into play. We all have our lens and
yeah.
perspective, but it's like it's we have the ability now with the power of the internet, like goodness, like it can be so and also it's freaking magic. Here we are, two different provinces having this conversation, but we have the opportunity now to web and weave and connect our own villages through this technology. And so when we can remember what a sacred tool it can be to be connected in this way, um, not everyone is for everybody. And the more we can stay in our own integrity and express from our place of our truth, it allows for everyone to decide, like, ooh, yeah, you're for me. Ooh, nope, no, thank you, not for me. And that doesn't mean you are right or
Yeah.
wrong, but it gives an opportunity to actually be like a true filter. So there's lots of pieces in there that I kind of feel like I sprinkled
Well,
in, but yeah.
yeah, and I really what it's kind of coming back to this conversation I had on the pod. I think it was by myself in the podcast episode where I was talking about like you're enough because you're enough because you're enough because you're enough because you're
Mm,
enough. And
mhm,
knowing that if you are leading a community that how you show up and how your participants show up, let it be enough. So, meaning if it's, you don't think that you're enough because most people listen to the replay, that's not truth.
mhm,
It can't be
mhm,
enough. Like for me during my concussion, it was hard for me to attend live. Sometimes it still is. I need to be able to, sometimes have the camera off and listen and then take notes to remember, because memory can be an issue.
mhm.
And I get what I need out of it
Yeah,
still. But
yeah.
I think sometimes we have these expectations, and I'm speaking this because it's truth from what I've even experienced in myself leading many group programs over the
Mhm,
years
mhm,
of thinking things should be a certain way, thinking it's not okay if everybody doesn't attend live. And to let go of that expectation on ourselves can be mind-blowingly different, like
yeah.
change the perspective, the energetics of your business completely. It
Mhm,
literally can. It will
mhm,
help you show up way easier and freeing in your body when you allow yourself to know that it's divine timing. It's enough. What you say is enough. What you're giving is enough. What your plan is enough. And the way that your participants show up is enough. And
mhm,
when we can
mhm.
just feel into that, like I'm enough because I'm enough and so are you, it lets go of all of the attachments and all the stories and all the beliefs that we've been held to believe,
Mhm,
that people
mhm,
have told us to believe. And gives this spaciousness for the magic to show up in that community. So when you are getting your inspiration on the replay and you come into the supportive group and you comment about the replay, that's the magic in that too.
mhm, mhm,
And also it's magic with the people that are live and sharing through their voice because they're ready to share through their voice. Others aren't ready to share through their voice. And that's an invitation, I think, too, for us to learn about connections in real life and how that can show up too. Or some people feel comfortable sharing their voice and being heard where others don't right now. It's,
yeah.
yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and it feels like a bit of a yes and because some people are meant to observe and actually are meant
Mm,
to have their energy field play in the vortex of things beyond what it is that they're saying, or whether they're putting and speaking words to it, like you said, whether they're writing something or just watching something, hearting something, or not even hearting it, and still choosing to participate with the intention and the values of the particular group, with the intentions that are created within that, like that changes the field too. I used to have a huge story before I became a community manager myself, that I was like a lone wolf because I would just like read people's posts, and every once in a while I'd heart
yeah.
something, and every once in a while I would comment on something, and a lot of the process that I have and do is internal, you know. And it
Mm,
wasn't
yeah.
until I was invited into, claiming the role of community manager, that I was like, oh, well, I can't just lone wolf it now. Now, how do I come in here and engage and foster, and you know what? It was my greatest joy. It's one of my greatest joys to be able to, really foster and facilitate like community and community engagement. And even still, as I take a step back and that role changes and moves depending on what community I'm in, um, even just last week, as much as work as I've done around this, I had there was a community space that I'm a part of. It's gorgeous, and it is a space that is really deeply a part of like my journey right now, of my body as the altar. So Jasmine Rose has this community, and I've been like going through the program, and I haven't been doing any of the community engagement, none of the prompts, none of the anything. And it was kind of like it's such a contrast and a comparison to how I'd been showing up in other spaces. And there's lots of reasons, right? Been going through a grief process, and my capacity isn't as as available to me. And then I was like, oh, I was wanting to write a post, but I could see that I was writing the post through the lens of being in service to the community versus like, I need to write this because it's important for me to write this and be expressed in this and have it be what it is. And so I had to like feel through that. It's like this isn't just a place that you arrive at. It's a place that you get to practice through each and every way we're engaging in humanity, really.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and through your words today, even the last like 25 minutes we've been talking or longer, but I can,
Mhm,
some of the words that you've been using reminds me so much of the Wild Soul Movement class that you teach, right? Because
mhm.
really learning about what your body wisdom is and what
Yeah.
it's teaching us gives us the tools, our own
Mm,
tools in our own
mhm.
body to give us a yes no of what feels good in community, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That, I mean, that's the practice of this embodiment work we're talking about. Do
Mhm.
you want to just weave that in terms of how you see that the movement practice that you do and community and connection, just in terms of how it can show up in your everyday life
Yeah,
with
I mean,
others?
sure. I mean, you said it so eloquently there in the fact that, like, when we know ourselves and are tuned with our own body and how it feels, we know the difference between a reaction and a response. The space between that breath, that settling down in our body so we can find the truth from our bones versus the truth from our stories, right? And I say stories like that's not a negative thing. We all have beautiful, brilliant stories. And when we can start to see how our body is responding to that, we can allow that to be a communication between whether the story is serving us, at least in that moment. And it's, again, an opportunity to connect to and be with ourselves. And when we can be with ourselves, we get to learn to be with each other. Like it's an interesting thing. It's this dance between like and this is my own work too. So I want to speak to that, right? That there's like this, like, well, when I get so attuned and connected to myself and the divine support that I have and the rootedness that I have with the beauty of mama nature and all the elements and whatnot, I'm like, like I don't really need anything. I've got everything that I need
Mhm.
right here
Yeah.
within the brilliance of my body, mind, and spirit. And no, I don't. Because I need you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to be seen by you. I want to be loved by you. I want to be nurtured by you. And I want to do the same for you in the and just like the rootedness of like who and how I am, that feels correct for me, right? So I can see that I can go between like the expansion of what it is to be alone, and then it's actually like,
Yeah.
wait, it's the expansion of like connection. And when I
Yeah.
can feel like really connected with myself, I'm then in the field of being connected to everyone around me too, because we can go into
Yeah.
all the stories about being, separate, but really not separate at all. And
Yeah.
it gives us a chance to fortify our, our, sometimes it's, you were saying yesterday when you're like, trying to have words to describe the class. It's like, sometimes we're trying to find words for things that don't have words. It's beyond that. It changes the 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 field of possibilities that's available to us when we can like be within ourselves and feel that sense of connection and safety. And sometimes it's also about coming together in community so that we can borrow the belief in ourselves from someone else, you know? Like if there's
Mm.
times where I need to be reminded, I know I can call you
Mm.
up and you'd be like, yo, I'm going to hold on to this belief for you. You forgot, but I did not. And here you are. Right. And so
Well, and that's
it's
like,
that worthiness
yeah.
piece. It's that connection piece. It's that value piece.
Yeah.
I don't know that
Well,
I answered your
I
question.
call well, no, but this speaks to something I talk about where we need others to sometimes expand our vision of possibility, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even though when I'm in nature and I'm in the Rocky Mountains and that's all I need, I because in that lens and I'm still
Mm-hmm.
human in this human
Mm-hmm.
experience, dealing with human
Mm-hmm.
life circumstances that can be very challenging, right? But for me to step out of when we're in a funk or we feel we're really limiting ourselves. So, whatever story that is that we're telling ourselves at the time. So, I mean, for people listening, that can look like anything: relationship issues, financial issues, career issues, body issues, health issues. When we create limitations in our thoughts, meaning what I mean by that is if you have a thought saying, I can't ever get out of this situation, or I can't do this thing, or it's always this way, those really
Mm-hmm.
extreme ways that we tend to negative self talk, allowing connections in our life to give us a different lens of possibility is, I think, for me, the biggest impact of being in community. So if I see somebody, so for me, as an example, coming out of having this brain injury, losing my brother, and losing my business for 2 years, which is really hard. If anybody's an entrepreneur, like it is, when you put a full stop onto your business, it's
It looks like we've had some technical difficulties, and Tara Joe's likely hopped off and will be hopping back on. I wasn't sure if she froze or if I froze, but the verdict is out because I'm the one left behind. The host will be back soon. I'm sure she'll continue to follow the thread in which she was speaking to, but more or less, it's just feeling like important to. There's like however you need to show up in community is enough, and there's going to be different seasons where showing up in the way that is available to you might not be the same as what was available to you in another season of your life, and letting that be okay, and letting the beauty of community kind of uh, hold you in that space when you are maybe not able to, yeah, show up the way that you were. So this was an interesting, fascinating conversation in regards to community. We didn't talk so much about collaboration, and I'm sure we'll continue to weave these conversations forward. So if there's more that you would like to talk about, explore, expand on in relation to Tara Joe and I and the way that we communicate, please let us know. And otherwise, like, stay tuned. There'll be far more topics that Tara Jo will explore on her Love Your Journey podcast with Sweet Bailey Boo. Thank you. Thank you all for listening, for watching, for playing.
well, the computer decided to shut down on me. And listen, this podcast, the way that I started this podcast was imperfectly for a reason, so that we can learn from these moments of what some might call a mistake or a glitch, or that they have to redo the whole thing over. And I'm going to invite this conversation. And what was really interesting is my computer decided in this moment to upgrade, to restart, shut down. and upgrade. And I think this is a whole other conversation to be had. But what
Mm.
I'm feeling is sometimes, for those that are new to my community and Marjolaine, is sometimes when the outside environment sends us these signals, which is messages for ourselves that we might already be feeling. Like my capacity is quite maxed, you know. Sometimes I feel tired and I still feel like I want to push through or do the thing or show up for the people. And sometimes it's moments like this where my computer is saying, "No, Tara, shut down for the day. It is time for you to have a meal, drink some water, lay on your couch with your dog, and also just enjoy life." Right. And in that, that's when the upgrade happens for us, really. In the restart, renew, upgrade. That is literally what happens to our bodies. And so I think this is a great place to end, even though I feel like I didn't have a great ending with you, Marjolaine, but I feel like this is an invitation for us to allow the listeners to feel into the sense of community and connection. We'd love to hear your feedback here because I really enjoy having this time with Marjolaine and being able to help people change their lens on perspectives in your own life. And so if you have topics that you'd like us to talk about and invite in, if there is feedback that you have in your own community or connections, something that you would love for Marjolaine to speak about or myself, please reach out to us. We'll leave those, contact information in the show notes. And for any of you that feel like you need to have a break right now, I just invite you to do that, whether it's landing in your seat that you're in right now, and with the words that you so eloquently invited in was Mother Nature is always here to support us and to help us feel held in these moments. And also, she clears our energy for us when we are feeling stuck or overwhelmed or need a reset. She is here. So, those moments that you might feel alone, you are not alone. You are always supported. You have the support of your chair or your bed or your couch or your floor right now, number one, but you also have the support of the ground underneath that and the core of Mother Earth holding us all. And in that, I invite you to receive that nourishment from her and allow community and connection to show up in that way from that grounded force. And I think we'll have another conversation on what capacity looks like and the rhythms of our body and when to listen when it's screaming at us to shut down and restart. Because what I know to be true is often when we have these moments of breakdowns in our life, whatever that looks like, form of exhaustion, chronic pain, chronic illness, whatever that is, there is a sense of real renewal and upgrading that happens within and out. And so thank you, Marjolaine, for coming on for this beautiful conversation.
Thanks so
And
much
thank
for
you,
having me.
universe, and my computer for
Yeah,
interrupting
time for a
our
cat
flow.
nap.
I'm going to move my body. I'm going to invite anybody else to do that too. If you haven't moved your body, even as gently as you can today, I invite you to move, open the windows for some fresh air. And thank you. We'll see you again, Marjolaine. We'll see you in the
Looking forward to
clouds
it.
next week in the Divine Love Healing Collective with the Wild Soul Movement. And have yourselves a beautiful day. Thank you, everyone. Be kind.